comic show. Come hang out with Skip and Ash. Talk about indie comic. It's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. Come hang out with Skip and Ash. Talk about indie comic. It's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. Come hang out with Skip and Ash. Talk about indie comics. Good times. Unnamed Indie Comic Show. Good times. Unnamed Indie Comic Show. It's the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. Come hang out with Skip and Ash. Talk about indie comics. It's the
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Indie Comic Show. Likely never gonna get named because it just seems to have stuck. My name is Ash, and joining me as always is the real star of the show, my boy Skip and Tosh. How you doing today, Skip? Uh-oh. Technical difficulties on the set. Skip! I swear to you, he was here. He must have ran when that horrible
No,
music came
technical triumphs on the set.
Triumph.
Triumphing.
He has triumphed. Welcome.
How's it going, everyone? I had to check on some technical things, and we are sounding pretty darn good on the stream. So I have returned with my buddy Ash. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about some indie comics, and happy to see everybody in the chat. Zach Richmond, Tehillim 29, Dragon Majesty, Maranya, Eric. My name is Breen in the house. It's lovely to be back.
Awesome. Very good. So speaking of the technical things that we were mentioning here, YouTube's reporting some technical difficulties to me, but it's one of those things that I'm not able to see or replicate. So if you guys hear any problems, feel free to put it out in the chat. Seems like things are okay now, so we're going to continue on as if nothing is wrong. As you guys know, for those of you maybe new to the Indie Comic Show, this is a podcast format meant to really be listened to. You can watch, of course. We got YouTube, so we throw up some graphics and things occasionally, but we want to stylize this so you can listen to it at work, listen to it while you're driving the car, listen to it while you're doing the dishes, whatever it is, you're doing something and you want some audio in your ear. You want to hear Skip's beautiful voice lulling you. Anyways, I'm getting distracted. We're here to talk about indie comics. Skip and I both love indie comics, and there's not any... Well, I shouldn't say that. YouTube's got millions of shows. There's not a lot of shows devoted towards indie comics. The big two, DC, Marvel Comics, get their fair share of love and attention, but indie comics don't. And this is a type of hobby, as you guys well know, that really requires word of mouth. And we're here to kind of replicate just that water cooler talk of yesteryear, back when people talked at water coolers, or just, hanging around the comic book shop, just talking about books and just giving some stage time to the indie books. So today we're going to do a Hangout episode, which is a little bit different than our normal format. Normal format is we talk about one of the current books that we're reading, the newest issue, and we geek out over it just like we would one of those fan shows of things like Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or whatever the big geeky show of the moment is. And if you ever listen to those podcasts, we theorize about where it's going, what we're loving about the book. And this is not a review show, just to be clear as well. This is a show where we're unabashed in our fandom. And then we also typically have a secondary book that we talk about that is not current, that has gone in the way of the back issues or the way of the trade, as we like to call it. And sometimes those books don't get the same type of attention as the newer books because they're not in the discussion, right? You didn't just go to the comic book store on Wednesday and be like, yo, did you read the latest issue? you might have, you go and you pick up one of these books in trade and it was like 10 years ago. And you're like, dude, did you read this trade? Like, yeah, I read that 10 years ago. And then you're like, oh, man. So we like to bring in some of these books and talk about them and sort of like put them back in the limelight so you can read them along with us and have that new talk. But anyways, that's the normal episodes. Unfortunately, the two books that are featured on our occurrence are Firepower and Decorum. They don't always come out exactly monthly. The idea was we had two books. We do bi-weekly. Every other week, we're alternating. And in a perfect world, we'd be bouncing off each other book, every other book. You guys get, leapfrogging. You understand. But unfortunately, sometimes the books come out late. Things like that happen, and we don't have a book to do. And it can be kind of difficult to do a fill-in book. One time we tried a Hangout episode, and it worked pretty well. Skip liked it. I liked it. You guys seem to like it, and that's what we're doing with the Hangouts. They're sort of like fill-in episodes. This is just a more casual format. We didn't really, not that we do a lot of rehearsals, but, we didn't plan it out quite near like we would these other episodes and so forth. We just get a couple books that we're reading. I ask Skip, hey, what are you reading? You're reading these books? Okay. And I get some images out, and we're just going to talk about stuff. We might just ask some questions about indie comics. We might interact with the chit chat. You guys, if you guys have anything to say about any indie comics, put it in the chat. This is your time to interact. This is a hangout, right? So just understand where we're going with that. Skip, tonight, I'm drinking a Rockstar because I heard that you are what you eat. So I was thinking that applied to what you drank too. What are you drinking tonight?
I'm eating people because I'm a normal person.
Whoa! All right.
That definitely came from a book that I've been consuming. So I guess maybe we are a little bit of what we read too. I am drinking Genmai tea. If we're going to continue our discussion from last week of teas and possibly getting into teas and all of that stuff. As I say a little bit more about this tea, everyone in the chat, please share what you're sipping on, what you're drinking right now. H2O, life juice, as a buddy of mine used to call it. Let us know. Genmai tea is really cool. It's got a nice kind of it is a very earthy kind of grain type tea. It is a peasant's tea. That's kind of the history behind it. I was really looking for chamomile, but I forgot that I had ran.
Well, that didn't work out so good. Skip got dropped from the Discord. So we'll have to wait till he gets back. Hopefully that's just a minor technical error. My Discord still seems to be up on my side. So let's see what the chat is going on when we wait for Skip to come back. Skip, don't leave us. Looks like Dragon Majesty, can't even talk straight, is drinking some Pepsi. Very good. I also got some dinner earlier, so I swung by the convenience store to pick up some soda because I got some Mexican food. I always have to have, I'm a soda fiend. And I do this thing, half Coke, half Dr. Pepper is my drink of choice, but it only works out of the fountain. I've tried it like out of the can or the bottle or whatever, like at home, mix it, does not work. I do not know why this doesn't work. So it's kind of a reason for me to get soda at a convenience store because it's the only way I can get it. And a local convenience store by my house. It's funny because you can't get refills anymore because of, the coof. And it's they still let you, if you tell them I want a refill, they'll charge you a refill. So it's like 70 something cents. So, hey, Skip is back and I can stop blabbing now. Continue on with your peasant's tea. Just Skip.
Oh, hey, I'm a peasant. I drink peasant's tea. But that. No, I mean, no, that's majority of it. It just puts you in a place where you feel very grounded and you feel like you're out in an open field with the sun, like golden hour, kind of brushing your face with the sun rays. It's very tasty. I put a little bit of honey in it, not too much. I do very much like the taste that the tea presents itself. Good.
All right, very good. Um, I like tea. I just I need to do better. I need to. My problem is if I can't do snobby at it, then it's like why do it? I'm just kidding. That was a joke for Breen. Ed Brewer's in the house. He's drinking some coffee. Cheap ass coffee. Well, sometimes there's something to be said about that. I think coffee sometimes gets a little bit too pretentious. You want to talk about something that's snobbery. I think a lot of people think like, oh, if I got my coffee from X and Y whatever place, this is the better coffee because it has a brand name that, and I think that actually there's some still store brand stuff like that is as good as anything you're gonna find, say, at Starbucks. So, and I think also I will attest it. I think 7-Eleven, their coffee, they're like the regular 7-Eleven brand, whatever their basic, not any, because they have like millions of other flavors now, of course, but just the basic 7-Eleven house blend is a solid medium roast coffee. I will put that up with most anything that's not super gourmet expensive. Our chat's not real active tonight, Skip. What's going on with you in the world of comics? Is there anything? Have you picked up anything, or just read anything like new that just sort of came out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa?
New that came out of nowhere, and I was like, whoa.
Okay, way to highlight my non-eloquence.
I was more so reading back the order, trying to kickstart my brain.
Basically, something that isn't a tried and true, like you knew about this comic, you've been reading it for years, but maybe something that like just sort of in the past couple of months, you didn't, like 3 months ago, you didn't really know much about it at all, and for some reason you come across, and you're like, oh, this is a nice book. This has got my attention. Is there any books like that?
Happening quite a bit. Dan Waters of Coffin Bound and how am I getting Homesick Pilots?
Mm-hmm.
I found another book of his last week called Limbo, and I started chomping on that. It is actually with the same artist from Homesick Pilots, and that's really interesting. That's got a interesting premise, nice little vibe to it. I think a book by Steve Grant called Damned. Steve Grant also did Two Guns, which got turned into a movie with Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg. It was a pretty entertaining movie, but he's got a story named Damned, and it's a kind of noir genre style book too. And I started nibbling on that. I got through the first two issues within the trade, and that was pretty good too. So I would say out of everything, those would be the main two that I can think of off the top of my head that kind of jumped out at me. Anybody in the chat, if y'all have anything, feel free to throw those out too. But what about you, Ash? Has there been any books that you kind of didn't quite have on the radar, took a chance on them, and they were home runs for you?
Well, I don't know about necessarily a home run, but definitely got my attention. What was that line from I should know this one too. That line from Django Unchained, where it's like, Leonardo DiCaprio's, you had my something or other, and now you have my attention.
You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
Yeah. That's I love that line.
Me too.
Before I go on to that, Dragon Majesty says, I read 4 issues of Scumbag, and it's still offensive and entertaining. I read the first 2 issues of Scumbag, and you read I think, a couple issues, maybe.
I read the first issue.
You read the first issue. I know it wasn't your cup of tea, no pun intended, and it's really not my cup of tea either. I read the first 2 issues. However, I did notice when I read the second issue, it did seem to improve off the first. It's not really a book that I want, but I did recognize some really good writing. So, if you guys out there think a book, the name of the book, Scumbag, is aptly named. It is a book about a scumbag. It does not pretend at all. If you think that might be in your wheelhouse, give it a try. Because I think, even though it wasn't your cup of tea, or either of our cup of tea, I really thought the art was well done. Did you like the art at all, Skip, on that book?
I did like the art. That was probably my favorite thing about it, and I think I could tell that the art was effective because it did present it as that much more offensive.
Yeah, it does. It's going to heighten your reaction. It's going to either heighten your distaste of it or it's going to heighten your love of it. But
yeah, fully. It was grotesque and gratuitous. But that's exactly, what they were going for. And Rick Remender is one of my favorite writers. Even with him being like, I rarely feel like he's hit or miss with the quality of what he does. With me, he's hit or miss with the story. Does the story resonate with me or not? I always seem to see the quality of his writing, whether I enjoy it or not. But the art absolutely did its job for sure.
Yeah, it's really, I was like, wow, this book. Wow, I was like, I wish the books that I loved had this good art, because it's really good. Anyways, if you guys want to read a story about a scumbag, if you've played the video game, I know some of you, and this is not a video game stream, but I know this video game GTA 5, Grand Theft Auto 5. I can't remember the main character, but the meth. You play 3 different characters in this game. One of the characters, who's typically the most popular character for some reason, I forget the character's name. Someone in his chat can say it. He's the guy that lives out in the desert, and he's the meth guy, and he's a total scumbag. The character of this comic almost reminds me of that. Like, hey, let's make a comic of this guy. That might be for you. Let's see. Ronnie says she could use some coffee tonight. She's sleepy. Dragon Majesty agrees with the art. And so about me, the book that kind of came out of nowhere for me, and we'll probably talk more about it later, is We Only Find Them When They're Dead. This is a book by, God, help me out on this.
Al Ewing.
Al Ewing, a guy that I'm not predisposed to like. And to be fair, the first couple issues, I wasn't totally on board. I was like, okay. But I was looking for more. I'm trying to expose myself to more indie books. And I'm just like, I'm trying to find my next love. And something prompted me to just keep reading it. And I gave there's currently only 5 issues out there. And by the time I got to the end of the 5th issue, I was like, yeah, I really want to know where this is going. And the art is very different. It's very, I don't want to say it's really that different. It is very different. But it's not very different in the way that it's like Trad Moore on Silver Surfer Black, and you're like, whoa. It's more like very different in that it just doesn't follow exactly to the basics that we're used to, the paradigms in comic book art. It definitely tries some manga approaches. I really loved the coloring. More from an aesthetic view, I love the starkness of being in. It's a space. The whole book takes in space, and all of the colors of the people, which are usually like inside spaceships, are really bright primary colors because they have like computer screens. And it almost feels like it sometimes reminds me of that effect you get when you look at blacklight art under a blacklight. And and there was something about it. I just like very neon, very just different than I'm used to, and I found it really working for me. And so yeah, I'm very much excited about this series, and this depending. I know you read at least one issue of the book, and you're curious about reading more. So this could be something that earns its way to the table on the Unnamed Indie Comic Show for more discussion. But that's the book that I was like, whoa, this guy, what? So, yeah, that's what's going on here.
Indeed, yeah, no, it was really good. I enjoyed the art. The coloring was top notch. I really like how a lot of the shots were framed within it. Al Ewing, from everything I've read, I think with the exception of what I got from Guardians of the Galaxy, I've enjoyed his space stuff, his universal type things, and so him Unchained, no editorial, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, it's just him and the creative team. I really enjoyed what I saw from it. It would be easy for me to continue to read it. Only reason why I haven't is because with comics I can be a little bit of like a bird with an eye for something shiny. I'm like, oh, look at that new thing, or oh, what? That's an old comic that everybody like really likes. I've never heard of that before. Or, oh, what? That's like a proto graphic novel by, gosh, Jim Steranko. Like, oh yeah, I want to check that out. So that's the only reason why I haven't gotten back to it yet. But for anybody who hasn't checked it out, I think it's worth your time.
Yeah, it is. And Tehillim says it does get a little repetitive in some places, which I'm not really going to disagree with. But it does have an underlying story. He says he's been reading that comic as well. Do disagree that it has a manga approach. And I want to maybe clarify. I'm not trying to say it's a manga approach as much as the visuals feel more Asian inspired than your typical like Western comic, which is like the Marvel and the DC. And so there's just an aesthetic. I guess that's the way. Just a visual aesthetic, and the way the characters are drawn, the spaceships and stuff like that. That reminds me more of the art is lending itself towards a style that will appeal, I think, to manga fans, maybe more so than traditional fans. Although it's very much all across the board. Anyone can like it. That's just what I was trying to get at.
Indeed.
So, Dragon says he's also reading that book, and he's finding it very interesting and an interesting premise, and good so far. Awesome. So look, we got that. The most interaction about one of the books is that Jeff Lemire has a new book, and I was going to try to read it before this show. Have you heard of this? It's a Comixology original, which I don't think I've ever read any of those before. I'm much more of a physical book guy, even though I read lots of digital. But it's called Snow Angels, and it's by Jeff Lemire and Jacques. Let's see. Put it up on the screen here. Have you heard of this or anything, Skip?
I have read a Comixology original. I actually read issue number 1 of the one that Vita Ayala did about like the young girl in the arcade.
Mm-hmm.
I had not heard of this one. I guess I haven't been going to the front page of Comixology, or when I do, it's like I'm searching for a book and I go straight for it and I just buy it. But that's an interesting creative team. Like Jeff Lemire, more often than not, I do appreciate Jock. For the most part, I like not one of my favorite artists, but
Yeah.
but a very competent artist. That maybe that's the best compliment I can give Jock.
He is a competent artist.
Yeah.
You can see here some art pages here. I actually did read. They released a how do I say? It's like a promo book for this. Like it's like the first half of the first issue for anyone, whether you have Comixology or not. You could download it and read it. And so I like Jeff Lemire. Not everything that he does. He's sometimes he writes stuff that I'm like, okay, whatever. But we'll get into more of that later. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try this out. And when I was done with that preview, I was like, I want to keep reading, which I thought was a good thing. And I have Comixology Unlimited, so I figured I should maybe check this book out. It's being released in a how do I say, like a periodical format. So they're not just dumping it all out at once. I think it's going to be like 10 issues or so. Approximately, I don't know the exact number, but it's a mini series, and they'll release it on some sort of schedule. And if you have Comixology Unlimited, any Comixology original book is always part of the program. If you don't have the Unlimited, you should consider getting it. It's a really good service. Or you can just buy them. They're $2.99, so they are cheaper than a normal comic, digital. Some people, that's a real issue for. But this might be something on your radar. I thought I would bring it up because it was something I was hoping to read before today's episode to give, like, not a full review, but hopefully it'd be awesome and I could gush about it. But I did like the preview that I read. And just want to bring it to people's attention because I have never read any of the Comixology originals. Most of them, I have to admit, don't look interesting to me. I go, oh, this looks terrible. Or they don't look like they're for me. That was a big thing too. I was like, oh, this is an audience that I definitely am not in. But this Elephant Men, I didn't know anything about. And I looked a little bit more into it, and this seemed like a pretty cool series that I want to check out. And this is it used to be a print comic. I think it might have been an Image a while back. But the series has kept going, and now it's a Comixology original. It's one of their things, and I've heard good things, so I really want to check that out too. If you guys in the audience, if you read any Comixology original stuff, put it out there. Let me know what's worth checking out, because like I said, the cool thing about if you're a subscriber, you have access to all of it. So I don't have to worry about buying anything. If you say, hey, Ash, check out, XY book, I can. Are you a Comixology Unlimited member too, Skip?
You darn tootin'.
Yeah, I knew you were. High fives. Let's see. Dragon Majesty in the chat says, I like Big Girls by Jason Howard at Image, but it may come off as too lefty for some. Cool kaiju genre action. All right, well, I like some kaiju genre action. And Skip, you mentioned Sentient. I picked that book up. Have you read it yet? Or no, you're about to read it?
No, I'm gearing up to read it. You and I talked about it, and we had purchased it separately, and we were like, "Oh, we both have that book. Oh, cool. Maybe it might make an appearance on the show." But
did you also pick?
It's funny.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say Gabriel Walta did. It's kind of topical in the sense that Gabriel Walta is the artist, and Gabriel Walta and Tom King had done that Vision book together. So everything that's going on with WandaVision and whatnot on the TV shows kind of brings it around full circle. And recently, I purchased myself a Gabriel Walta variant cover for an Ice Cream Man issue, and it's bloody good, pun intended.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, definitely will have to check that out. I picked up the Sentient a little while back. Comixology had a big sale on TKO comics. All the TKO comics were on sale, and TKO is an independent company that has an interesting business model. What they do, all their books are miniseries, and they release all the books at once, kind of the Netflix model. And so, using Sentient as an example, it's a 6-issue miniseries. When the book came out, it was like, here's issues 1 through 6, all on the same day, and it comes in a little slipcase, so you get its real nice presentation. Or you can actually just buy it in a trade paperback format, which is kind of cool. And for me, I'm just kind of thinking, if you're going to release them all on the same day, that seems to me how you would buy them. But I guess some people still really dislike their floppies. It's an experimental thing. I have my own issues with it, but suffice it to say, that Comixology had this one big sale one day where all of their stuff was on sale for $1.99 for the entire series. So I told Skip about it. We both picked up that series, and I also picked up another series that I had heard good things about called Sarah. And did you pick up that one too, by chance?
That one I did not. I believe that was a book with Epting that Epting had drawn.
Yes, Steve Epting art and Garth Ennis writing.
Yes.
And
I did not pick that up.
On the subject of indie comics, folks, I just have to say that is one of the best indie books I have read in quite a while. It's I don't want to say quite a while. I've read some Ed Brubaker's. It is one of the best indie books, not Ed Brubaker, I have read in quite a while. I like Garth Ennis for the most part, but I really think about Garth Ennis oftentimes as just sort of the weird British guy who likes the crude humor and the violence, and he's like doesn't like superheroes, so he's kind of always satiring superheroes. You know, he has that weird Garth Ennis flavor. If you've read The Boys or if you've read any of his Punisher stuff, you know what I'm talking about. And some people aren't necessarily big on that, which is fine. I haven't read him do anything that wasn't like that, so I was like, what's this Sarah going to be like? And it's not like that at all. There's no wisecrackery to it. There's no satirical weirdness to it. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a Garth Ennis book. It feels like a really solid social drama on the nature of war and how it affects people. And the premise of the book, without going too much into it, is it's a squad of Russia. It's all about Russia and Germany. By the way, it's World War II on the Russian front. Mm-hmm. These Russian girls who've been drafted into fighting because Russia just said, you can hold a gun, you're fighting, you know. And they're been trained to be snipers, and they're all female squad of snipers. And the main character, who's the best of the snipers, is this girl, Sarah. And on its surface, it seems like a very simple story. Like, oh, look, it's going to be girls kicking ass and Sarah's the best. But it's really not. She's very accomplished, but the story is told in a very respectful, realistic manner. And it really touches on the idea of like war and loyalty to one's country. But how far do you draw that loyalty when things cross the line? And using Russia as a backdrop rather than the United States allowed Garth to tell a story that was political without feeling like it's trying to preach modern politics to you. More of just like, here's the nature of the state versus the people and things like that. And it's just really cool, really cool. It ends in a heartfelt manner, makes you think about things. And and Steve Epting, top of his game art. It's just a gorgeous book. I recommend anyone check that out. I would love that book to be in a hardcover. I would get that. Yeah. Sorry, I get mouthing off.
No, I mean, like, you've definitely sold it to me a lot more, because that's part of the reason why I don't read very much Garth Ennis stuff, because of how irreverent and usually, what was the other word? Kind of like grotesque his stuff tends to be.
Mm-hmm.
And to a point, like even like self-indulgent in like a very like violent and malicious way. But to kind of hear that story is a little more, I don't want to call it heartfelt, because I can't say that I got that from it, but it just has a little more depth and maybe a little bit more like reverence, the opposite of what it usually is.
It does.
I guess
it has like all that.
That intrigues me.
I think based on what I'm learning from you and your tastes and stuff, I kind of go, okay, I've read Punisher, I've read The Boys, I've read Sarah. What's different about these books? Skip doesn't really like these A and B. Would he like C? I think so, because you strike me as an individual who very much appreciates characters and character development and theme, and especially certain themes. Obviously, there's themes that you're not fond of, but when a writer can explore themes and get in with these characters that are intriguing and compelling, more so than just a robotic plot. Not to say one is necessarily better than the other, but everyone has different tastes. That's what seems to be. And so when I was reading Sarah, I was like, yeah, I think Skip really, because this book does. It explores, like it says, the nature of war and, your loyalty to your country. Yeah, you're fighting for your country, but what happens when your country may not be worth fighting for, And like I said, I think if you had told this story and made it about like Americans, it would just feel like, because we have our current political nature. You can't avoid it. But telling it in World War II with Stalinist Russia fighting the Germans, who are the literal fascists, was very interesting, because this story didn't happen, but the events that the story is centered around all really did happen. It's not made up nonsense. And it's just, I just found myself caring about these characters, and and he doesn't hold any punches. It's war, so people die, and you're just like, and there is some violence, but it never felt gratuitous. Yeah. Most of the time you just see red pools, like, because it takes place all in the winter, so it's very like black and white. It's not a black and white book, but it's all snow and everyone's wearing snow gear, and then there's just like the dead trees. So it's a very stark contrast. And then when someone gets shot, there's like a red spot and it stands out. It's just, the art decisions were, oh man, the art in this book is gorgeous. Epstein is just like, Epstein. Why did I just say Epstein? That's a problematic name, Steve. Steve Epting is, like I said, on top of his game in this book. But I don't want to linger too much on that. I just, you can tell how much I loved it.
I'm gonna check it out now.
Let's see. LK is in the house, and he says, if you want your kaiju fix, pick up Kaiju Score. The first issue is a little dry because it does all the setup, but issues 2 and 3 really pick up. It's the classic heist gone wrong with kaiju. Now that's an interesting elevator pitch right there. I gotta be honest, I don't really read kaiju comics, but that sounds pretty cool to me. What about you, Skip? You ever read any kaiju books?
Well, yeah, the Murder Falcon book that I'm reading right now by Daniel Warren Johnson. That is, it's not traditional kaiju, but it's definitely kaiju, like inspired.
I did not know.
Yes,
I did not know. I think we're going to be talking about some Daniel Warren Johnson here going forward. In fact, maybe we could just get into that right now. We got some comic books I know that each of us have been reading. I guess with that segue, why don't we talk about some Murder Falcon, if you're up to it?
Yeah, actually, the Murder Falcon one, I kind of wanted to circle back around to if we get to it. I have some books that I'm a little more interested in speaking about.
All right, Jen Psaki, we'll circle back around.
There we go. Let's circle back around.
What would you like to start talking about? And you lead us off.
Ice Cream Man issue number 23.
Ice Cream Man 23.
23.
I don't.
This book.
I did not get that book. Stand by. Go ahead. Keep talking. I'm working in the background.
All right. This book just continues to just impress me in all of the ways. It's funny how, Ash was saying, and he was hitting the nail on the head. I tend to like stories that respect the characters, while also having an interesting plot. It doesn't always have to be the most mind blowing plot, but if you can get creative, you pull me in a little bit more. What if there's something that I don't care to have a whole lot of reverence to more often than the characters? It's the like comic book convention. Like the reason why comic books are the way that they are now is because at multiple points in times throughout the history of comics, there came people who pushed it and said it can be more than this, it can be different than this, it doesn't just have to be this. And they created a new norm, people followed suit, were inspired by it, so on and so forth, until we get to this very day, March 1st, 2021, Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. And Ice Cream Man 23 just continues to do that. I don't know. I don't know how W. Maxwell Prince like just continues to find ways to think outside of the box, kick the box, punch the box, light the box on fire, take all the ashes, put it in an urn, shake it up, snap his fingers, wave his hands with white gloves on him as he has a cape and a top hat on, and then pull a new Ice Cream Man issue out of it. And it's not exactly like like the rest, by still having that familiar sense of dread and like like malice, but in like a in like a check your ego, check yourself type of way.
Let me let me
The art.
let me
Oh yeah,
interrupt you for
go
a
ahead.
moment, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
I know when we read really awesome comics, like Ice Cream Man is reputed to be, we could forget
Mhm.
that not everyone else reads the book. Can you give
Sure.
us a breakdown of what this book's all about? Why are people like, just kind of set the stage for someone who comes in and goes, I've never heard of this book. Why,
Totally.
what's the deal?
As simple as that would seem in most cases, and I'd be able to lay that out flat. That's not a whole lot to ask, but because of what this book is, it is a little more of a tall order than most would think. I'll kind of try to wrap it up in as specific of a sense as I can, because no two issues are exactly the same. So that's what makes it difficult. But the Ice Cream Man is a thematic book, um, anthology in a sense, all happens within the same, I'm not even going to say within the same world, within the same multiverse. And the recurring theme is this Ice Cream Man character, and the Ice Cream Man character always shows up and has nothing but bad news and bad intentions whenever they come along. The first episode was a little bit of a mystery kind of detective procedural, while the second issue, number 2, was like a story of two drug addicts and a couple that are older and just kind of at the end of their wits, and their worlds colliding. While issue number 3 was about a one-hit wonder musician who, within his hallucinating mind and not being able to let go of the past, falls into this world where he's demanded to make one more hit to save the world. It's just like no two issues are the same, but what does always pop up is the Ice Cream Man, and he always pops up right as someone is at their most vulnerable point, and he never ever ever has good news or good intentions. That's the best way I could describe it.
All right, very good. Yeah, and please proceed with the issue. I just wanted to make sure people had at least some frame of reference to understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely. No, and I appreciate that, because we want to, obviously, one of our main goals outside of just talking about these books with each other is to hopefully entice um each other and you all who are listening and watching, to possibly take a chance on these books and broaden your horizons when it comes to this wonderful world of comics that we all love so much. Because if we didn't, I don't think anyone would be here, unless someone's got a gun to your head right now and is forcing you to watch the stream. And if that's the case, good luck. Ice Cream Man issue number 23 is called Late Night Splashes. And it was very interesting. It sets up the characters on a character page. Essentially, we're dealing with a host of a late night show. We're dealing with his producer, who is also his almost like his best friend and assistant, his wife, um, one of the interns there at the studio, and an animal trainer who was a special guest that night on the show. Again, talking about breaking convention, and not like this has never been done before, but not often. Half of the book, or a little more than half of the book, is art, as we would guess, and they're there on the set of the TV show. The other half of the book is text, and it's running down each scenario they're at. Event happens. This is on live. Premiere Mac Benson tonight, and an animal trainer on, and they have a multiple animal snake comes along and starts eating his face live on air. And those three other people, in all of their account of the different, because I think we're looking for and along, and if you take it what it is, it's not.
Apologize, folks. That's good.
The rest of it, and then setting their curtains of technical difficulty, tech name on smart one.
Right now, a lot of bandwidth.
Read that is freaking artistic of about working.
Hey, folks. Welcome back. We had some serious technical issues. Have no idea what's going on, but YouTube is telling me I have an excellent connection again, and I'm testing on the iPad on my side. I'm hearing good audio. Skip, you report to me if you hear anything different. Anyone in the audience still there? Thank you for waiting us out and being patient with us. I can completely understand if you went on to greener pastures, but we're here and we're just going to finish this up. If by any chance you're watching this after the fact, apologize for whatever. I don't know how this is going to go, how this is going to be recorded, what have you. I'll try to put some timestamps in the notes below. These are the things that happen, unfortunately. I'm not on a cable or fiber backbone. Internet issues are weird. So without further ado, let's get back into it. Skip, you said a ton of things about Ice Cream Man. I'm not going to ask you to rehash any of that stuff. Apparently, the Ice Cream Man got us tonight. But that sounds like a book that's probably going to be talked about in the future as well.
Yeah,
because this sounds like a book you're really liking.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm loving. Like I've begun to collect like the variants and all that stuff. Some of them I'm paying way too much money for. I was in on a little eBay bid that went from $250 to $585 in like 2 hours and then closed there. So I had dropped out long before that. But no, I mean, not even for collecting and reselling again. Most of my collecting that I do is because I really love the art and those books and the creative team. So yeah, chances are we will be talking about Ice Cream Man later on. It is the twilight zone of comics right now, and I'm loving it.
Awesome. All right. Did you have any other books you wanted to talk about?
Any other books? Haha was one of them, which I don't think most of the stream caught because we were under siege by the mouse and and Warner Media. But for the sake of saving my voice a little bit, I'm gonna sip on some tea. Do you mind? Can I tag you in? Can you maybe do like a elbow drop off the top rope on an indie book that you've been enjoying?
I believe I can do that. I wanted to talk a little bit about that that book that we were mentioning. We only find them when we're dead. And I'm going to try to bring them up on the screen here. If I can, I had to reset some things, so just bear with me half a second. Why is it not working? I'm terrible at this, trying to multitask. So we only find them when we're dead is a sci-fi story about a group of space miners, if you will. They are they mine giants in space, or gods actually in space. Couldn't have happened in a better time for me, Skip. They mine dead gods that they find in space. They're basically their bodies. So if you think about doing a twist on like mining asteroids or moons or what have you, and instead you deal with these bodies that they find. And that's kind of the crux. Like, that's the hook. You're like, oh, that's what makes it different. But then you think about that on a higher level and you go, oh, well, wait a second. That's kind of interesting. Why are they finding dead gods in space?
Right. Yeah.
And now that's just the setting of the story. One of the things I like about this book is that it utilizes a technique in writing that I really like. James Cameron, one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, does this quite well, does it quite often. He did this to probably the greatest effect in his movie The Titanic, where he takes a crazy setting to tell a story that really doesn't have anything to do with the setting itself, other than to make the story he wants to tell more interesting. And I think Al Ewing does something like that here. He could have told this a similar, well, I don't know if he could told this exact story, but the story so far he could have told in a story about mining asteroids in space, or even just mining on Earth in a mine. Like that's nothing necessarily special, but the fantastic setting, the events kind of highlight what's going on. Or not highlights what's going on, but makes you more intrigued because you're like, wow, this is different than I'm normally used to doing. At its heart, the story is really about this son who is the captain of this ship, who had something happen in his past. And he's definitely not a virtuous soul. He's not really a bad guy. He's kind of a scoundrel, if you will. He's very much his personality is not like Han Solo, but that archetype of that sort of kind of a character who walks in the gray. He's willing to do things that are morally dubious, but he himself is not a bad guy. He's just in really bad situations and he's just trying to survive. Now these giants, I call them giants. They're just space gods that they find, that they harvest. This is very much a dystopian society that we're living in. We get a little bit of backstory that the society is kind of on the brink of collapse, like economic collapse. Resources are very scarce, and there's always things. these space gods that they've been harvesting have been a boon, but it's still a limited resource. And you can see some parallels to some concepts, like fossil fuels and different things. The government is very regulatory and strict, and people that are joining these mining crews and these ships to mine these space gods, sometimes they don't play on the up and up, because selling the things that they harvest on the black market can often be much more lucrative than selling it the legal way. And so because of that, some of these people try to skirt the law, and they get killed by these enforcers that, basically survey every mining every time they find one of these dead gods. They're there like the police, and they monitor what's going on, and they pretty much shoot. They usually shoot first, ask questions later. It's a very strict police state kind of society. One of the main police enforcers is a woman who has a past with the main character and hates him, thinks he's no good. She's been waiting years for him to screw up, and she just knows he's gonna, try to steal something or do something. And when he does, he's gonna be there. But then there's a complication in the fact that she is, or at one point, she was engaged to a man who was part of the family, because a lot of these mining crews are family outfits. And I'm hesitating here because I know Skip hasn't read a lot of it, so I'm probably spoiling some of the things for Skip, unfortunately. And I'm trying to be as vague so that there's still fresh stuff to read. Her connections are, she was either engaged or married to this guy who was part of the family. She ended up killing him because the main character, his family, his parents, pulled an illegal job. But on the day that they did it, he kind of called in sick, so to speak. And so it was either I think it's his brother or someone else filled in, and he wasn't supposed to be there. And he didn't show up on the manifest and stuff. So when she had to shoot, she didn't know that her fiance was on board the ship. She didn't find out till later. She blames this main character. The story jumps through time, like decades. It takes place over several different time frames. They do timestamps. At first, it was a little confusing when I was reading it, and then I realized that they were putting these timestamps in the book. I liked all that. The family drama. At first, I was like, oh, it's all about these gods and they're mining space, and I was not finding the story as interesting as I was hoping because it wasn't revealing much. I was like, oh, look, they're mining the eyeball. How exciting, But after a couple issues, I realized that's not the point. The point more is that's the setting. Like, you don't go watch the movie Titanic because you're like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen to the ship. Is it going to sink? If you were around that long when Titanic came out, that was the big joke. Like, oh, why do I need to see Titanic? We all know the boat sinks. But that was never what the reason to see the movie. Same thing here. You're not reading this book necessarily because it's about, these space gods. It's about the legacy of this guy and his history. And there's some drama and some character setup and who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. We don't really know. Everyone's got motivations. But then there's complex ties between each other. And I'm not going to say that the dead space gods don't play a part. They are an interesting thing, but at least in the first 5 issues that I've read, they're more of the really cool backdrop to set the story on. It's not necessarily the point of the story. Now, that could change. We could find out. Without spoiling anything, those of you who have read this, the last couple of pages of issue 5 do throw you're like, what? I'm just not going to mention that here. That's not important. But this is a book that I am very excited to be reading. Skip, you did read the first issue of this. Yeah. Please maybe give your thoughts of how that first issue impacted you, and just, I don't know, whatever's on your mind you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I like when Al Ewing is able to take his time and, not being thrown into thing and rushed and, hey, we got this agenda, we got to like move it along. So, hey, you get plugged in here and you have to push the story along to get to here. It feels artificial. You just within the issue number one alone, you felt how much more tactful he was with how the story unveiled and opened up, even from like, from the people, the crew in his ship being introduced, and then the world being introduced and what protocols were, then what their job, was, or what it was said to have been, on the surface. And you go through with those things, and then there some additional characters, get introduced, and we find out that there's a little history between the main character, and then some of the people kind of doing some of the patrolling at the site where they were harvesting the body of the dead gods. And then as they went into like hyperspace or whatever, and there was a very limited amount of time where they weren't on a, recorded line, so to speak, how they were able to speak candidly, and come to find out they were doing some, like Ash had mentioned, some black market sales and some things that, that were below the surface. And just the way that it rolled out was much more natural, much more organic, much more masterful. I can't give everyone this credit, but if you write enough comic books over time, you should gain competency. You should gain, some level of mastery over the craft, or at least just be more crafty with it. And you could see, for all of the, not so great books that I've had to read from Al Ewing during his time at Marvel, and from all the interesting ones too, the Ultimates still remains one of my favorite series in the last decade that I've read from Marvel. Al Ewing, again, Unchained, really gets to show you his chops, and really gets to show you how he can roll out like a big idea that he has, because he comes up with cool ideas, but then also kind of keep it heartfelt and keep it and do work on the character level as well. So and you get all that in just issue number one. I hadn't even we touched the art a little bit, and you're able to see it, but I'm talking about away from the art. This is easily, if we're going on these types of stories, because it did remind me a little bit of Low by Rick Remender, which I really did like, and the art is even a little bit similar to Low. It's different enough, and I don't want to say that anybody's copying anyone else's homework, but what I liked about this story, in their parallels, is you really do get like that feeling where it's like, here's the top layer, okay, it's rolling out, like I can get on board with this, and then he drops you, a few hundred leagues under the sea, and you're like, oh, this is where we're really operating at. So Al Ewing getting to show you, his actual chops on this book. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, it's a very fun book. I recommend checking it out. If anything that Skip and I have talked about intrigues you, or if you find this up your alley, check it out. It's fun. It does feel very, it does feel a bit decompressed. I feel like there is, it's decompressed. It feels like there's a lot of panels per story beat, if you will. I think because of that, it's going to probably read better in a trade. Some people like that though, and if that's the case for you, that's great, because probably the first trade will be coming out here soon. I wanted to show some of the art here that I'm seeing. I can show you the samples from the Comixology, because I mentioned this earlier about how there's that real high contrast, bright primary colors versus the blacks, and you can see that kind of in these samples here. That's what I thought this was different than a lot of other comics I read. There is no white comic gutters in between panels. Like I said, the backdrop is always black because it's space, but then you can see, look at there's always these bright lights from computer monitors and different things, and it's a cool aesthetic that you wouldn't want to see in every comic book, but this book kind of gives an excuse to do that. And I just find it enjoyable to look at. What about you, Skip? Is there anything you want to say about the art in that aspect?
I mean, along with it, with the manga influence, I do see like a overall kind of like computer animated, like animated film influence as well. Obviously, with the blurs and those types of motion effects, as well as like some of the lighting and the coloring and how like it affects the depth of field.
Yeah.
It simultaneously gives you like a more realistic, like three-dimensional feeling, while also feeling, as artificial as it actually is. It kind of reminds me of like the concept of vaporwave, like it invalidates and validates itself like at the same time, but regardless of which, like you feel the ambition in it, and you do feel like the space of the world that all of these things are operating in. It does that you feel there's more air. It feels like there's more oxygen in each panel because of the depth of field that is being put in there. So it's cool. Like it does. It almost, you do have to orient yourself a little bit. You'll at first you'll be like, why does this not feel like what I expect a comic book to feel like when I open it up? But I think through time, as you spend more time within the world, you gain appreciation how it kind of separates itself from the rest of the books, and then you take it as its own unique experience. Which again is, kudos to the creative team. That's not something that happened by accident. They all planned for these things to be like this. So yeah, if you can it's almost like going on a ship, or on like a boat. Like if you can stomach the ride and not get motion sickness, you're gonna get a heck of a ride out of it.
All right. Well, I don't want to hang around too much on this book. We'll probably talk about this in the future. I imagine Skip's going to read more of the books and is going to want to talk about them. Give this one a shot. Dragon Majesty says, the art for We Find Them looks better on the computer screen. Much brighter. And to that, I was thinking very much the same thing. I did read these books on my iPad, and this art with the stark lighting and stuff and the silhouetting, it just really does pop, I have to say. I haven't seen them on the physical page. I would imagine you'd want to print this on a nice glossy paper to get this sort of high contrast effect. But I think either way, whatever you read, you're going to be happy. It's just good to look at. The other book, or I should say the other books I wanted to talk about today, and it's the thumbnail for what you're seeing on the, for the cast, is Ascender. This is a book that I feel like I'm the lone champion for. And I don't know why. It's really, really good. And it's by Jeff Lemire with gorgeous art by Dustin Nguyen. And I've said this a million times. I feel like I just repeat myself, but I got to remember that not everyone listens to everything that I record. This is a book, when I originally bought it, I just got it because it's a #1. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do this for my channel. Like I'm going to review this book. And I bought it and I read it and I was like, okay, interesting. And then like a week later, I was going to do the review. So I picked it back up and I skim read it again so that I could be fresh on the content. And I remember during that skim reading going, oh, hey, this is better than I remember. This is good. So then I did the recording. And if you know the format of my Ash On videos, I basically go through the whole book. And especially at this time when this book came out, it was a lot more like that, of like page 1 to page end, of just hearing, just going through the whole book. And by the time I got through it, it felt like a third reading. And I was like, I'm hooked on this. It just really started grabbing me. This girl on the cover, as a middle-aged man, I'm not predisposed to want to read fiction about prepubescent teen girls on adventures. It's not something, like the pastel color palette on the cover here. I'm just like, this is not for me. But holy shit, it was for me. She is a fantastic character. Probably my favorite character out of the entire whole series, if you count Descender and Ascender as one, big giant thing. I've said before, you do not have to read Descender at all to read Ascender. As a matter of fact, if you don't, I think you'll actually get a different experience on Ascender. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. It'd be kind of like the analogy that I think works the best is if you see Star Wars, the original trilogy, episodes 4, 5, and 6 first, and then you watch the prequels, which is pretty much how anyone my age did it, you're going to get that experience. But then there's lots of kids that grew up later that their first experience with Star Wars was episode 1, and they watched 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6. And it gave them a different experience. They still experienced all the movies, but that chronological digestion of the story affected. And I honestly almost think that Ascender might work better if you'd never read Descender. I don't think it's not a game breaker either way. But this is a book that just really grew on me. And I will admit one of my biases on this book also is that Ascender deals with the fantastic. There's magic in this book, whereas Descender is pure sci-fi, hard sci-fi, no magic. I am predisposed to the fantasy. There's many characters in this series that I like. This girl is, she's, I don't know. There's something about her. I like the authenticity of her. I think a lot of stories will make characters like this feel like a 20-something in a 9-year-old's body, and they just behave stupid. And you're like, that's not how a kid. She feels like a kid. She does have to grow up very fast because she's put on this crazy adventure, and some not so nice things happen that force kids to have to unfortunately grow up. And what I really like about this book are some of the many aspects that I love about Star Wars. Star Wars takes you into a fantastic world of places you've never seen, with a mystical thing called the Force, which is very compelling and exciting, and puts a bunch of fun characters that you just fall in love with, and you just want to see them over and over again have adventures. I'm talking about Han, Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, the droids. Jeff Lemire does a similar thing here. The characters in this series are just fun to watch interact with each other. The dialogue, they all have different personalities. It's not a deep book. Just like Star Wars isn't a deep storyline. It's a fun space opera / fairy tale / Western set in space. It's not trying to blow your mind with super deep concepts or anything like that. It's not an overly complex. It's very plot driven. It doesn't really explore hardcore themes, and I suspect if I got in a discussion with Skip a little more about this book, why it wasn't a top read for him, that might be the case, because it doesn't really try to make big bold statements or explore themes in that way. It just tells an adventure story, kind of like The Hobbit or something. But like I said, what I love about this is I'm just on that ride. I love seeing where these characters go. I love reading the dialogue and how they interact with each other. I like seeing where they end up. And if you've read Descender, then you're going to see on some of these covers, by the time you get to this issue number 11, there's a character from Descender reappearing. And this series, Ascender, takes place 10 years after the previous series ended, with all new characters. But then there's some overlap, which I think is really cool, right? It's really cool if you grew up with the Star Wars prequels as your Star Wars, you know, and Ewan McGregor's your Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then you see the sequels, you know, to you, the original trilogy, you're like, oh, look, Obi-Wan's now old and he's teaching the new guy. Like, there is some of that where these characters, they're not necessarily continuing characters, you know, their story, but they appear because they're part of the overall greater story that Lemire is trying to tell. I like with independent books like this that Dustin Nguyen is the artist of every single issue. Unlike mainstream books, when an artist has to take a break or something happens and they have to put in someone else, independent books, they've just decided to come up with this concept called hiatus. And a book may not come out for a couple months while someone goes on vacation or something. But the great thing is the run is never interrupted with different creators. Every single issue is Dustin Nguyen's beautiful art, which I have to admit, I didn't immediately love. And I discovered that what I didn't like or what I didn't love about it was the coloring. I fully admit my male biases. I like things to be a little more to masculine tastes. And I don't say that in any sort of superiority or that's better. That's just my cup of tea. And seeing things all colored with pastels and watercolors, it just feels a little not my way. But it's grown on me. And I really, really have been enjoying this. And I couldn't see these books any other way. Dustin Nguyen's pencils themselves are gorgeous. I love this book. By the time you get to issue 14, which is the current issue of the series, if you've read Descender, you can see this kid on the cover. You'll know who that is. And this is now finally really crossing over into the Descender storyline, which I'm finding very intriguing because that storyline was resolved, but now this story 10 years in the future is kind of intersecting it in a way. And I'm very much intrigued to see where this goes. Why do these characters appear now in this storyline? There's some cool connections. I love the dog. There's a little robot dog, which I believe, here's on the cover at the little girl's feet. It's very much the R2-D2 of this series, and he's got his own personality. And I love that he's broken. And the whole story starts off when she finds the dog in the woods. And the concept is robots are illegal because of the Descender storyline. Won't spoil that for you, but something happens. Robots are bad. All technology must be destroyed. This dog is found, and it has a significance to who it belongs to and stuff, just like R2-D2 was not. Even though you first discover him in episode 4, you find out that, oh no, R2-D2 was in episodes 1, 2, and 3 as well. You belong, anyways. Here, you get this dog, and the dog makes these noises. He barks, but he goes fra, fra. And that's what you always see on the thing. And I didn't catch it right away until I went and I read Descender, and he says arf, arf. And I was like, oh my God, it's so in Ascender, he's like broken and he barks backwards. And it just little touches like that are kind of endearing, but also intriguing about like, why is he broken? Why is he doing this now? And I don't know. I just love this series so much. I hope someone's reading this. I want to talk about this book. I don't want to spoil it for everyone. It's a book that makes me feel things. It's a book that puts a smile on my face. And it's just the kind of, sometimes you want your fiction to move you emotionally. Sometimes you want your fiction to speak a truth to the world, and just be like, that you can point to, like I do with, say, 1984. I think 1984 speaks a very human truth, and it's important. Everyone should read that book. And sometimes you just want to escape in a fantasy world with interesting characters who are fighting against evil and go along with the ride. And that's what Ascender does for me.
outside of the story and of course the art, which you've you know like taken to now, like is there any other particular thing that you would tell someone who might be interested in it to kind of hook them or that they might connect to?
Mm, I don't know if I can think of anything else. Um, like I said, what hooks me is the characters and their interactions, a strange fantasy world that, if you like world building, just exploring and seeing new places, characters having that banter with each other, and each having their own motives and personalities, but then kind of being forced to work together. Um, my thing is, if you like the type of storytelling that the original Star Wars trilogy tells, not necessarily a chosen one. This girl, so far, I have not seen her be a chosen one per se, but not if you like that sort of hero's journey per se. I don't know. This is a book I think checking out, especially like if you said, or I said, that the simplicity of it. I think some people may be turned off because they go, "Oh, this book is. I was expecting more. I thought this would deliver something." Like I said, it's not going to speak to some great truth and social commentary. I don't think it's not going to explore themes of whatever family or racial tensions or whatever type of themes that you might want to see explored. It doesn't really do any of that. It just, look, there's some darkness going on in the world and these characters get caught up in it and they have an adventure. It's very simple, but it's just fun. And I think Lemire is capable of writing many different types of stories. If we read Gideon Falls, this is like the polar opposite. Like I said, it's escapism, and it's just beautiful to look at. And I think if you read, I think I would tell people, read the first trade. You can get it for very cheap. I've been tempted to read it on my channel during my Storytime episodes, just to see if I can hook some people, because I want more people to love what I love. I know not everyone thing is for everyone, and like I said, I fully admit my biases. When I first started this, I was like, oh, okay, but something just grabbed me. I love it.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit with me having read some of Descender and then reading issue number 1 of Ascender. I mean, Jeff Lemire to me, I can't. It's not too often to me that he doesn't have that touch, especially when it's like ensemble, when it's like a multi-character type thing. He's just really good at kind of like pulling people together and then making like the relationships between people like relevant and making you invest in them. That's, I feel like, what he does best. And I was trying to think, like, what are some more like solo type character things that Jeff Lemire has done that I've read, and I really can't think of any. Every single one eventually, like the the cast that surrounds the main character, he always makes them tie in very kind of like heartfelt ways. So you know he's good at that. But yeah, Ascender. I mean, the more you talk about it, the more it has me interested. Maybe I'll creep past issue number 2 one day. Who knows?
Yeah, and I'll just show real quick here, because I was able to find the first issue is available on Comixology Unlimited, so I can kind of show off the art. I mean, it's the same cover art, but it's a little, when you see it on the page. Here we go. And you can see it's just beautiful. It's pencils with watercoloring as the colors. And like I said, at first, as a guy, and I was just expecting maybe a little bit more edgy, hard line art style. I wasn't the soft pencils and watercoloring. I was like, but it just grew on me. And this main bad girl, the bad person here, she's the mother. If you've seen the movie Willow, she's very much a Queen Bavmorda analog. and it's just very interesting. It's this world now, very stark contrast to Descender. There is no technology anymore because it's all been outlawed, but they use these giant creatures to transport, like the tortoise here, and this little girl. She's grown up on this backwater planet. Again, you can see parallels, and she's trying to do some trading, get some food or whatever, because they're poor, and her dad is super protective, aka Uncle Owen, doesn't want, just, and very strict. And we don't know why, unless you've read Descender, you'll know why. But we see that this Bab Morta woman, the mother, she's got a line of sisterhoods before her. When they die, they stay kind of spirits, and they advise the current living mother, which is this woman. So it's kind of reverse of the Jedi. You have the Force ghosts. So this one, the evils, they all Force ghosts to the main. And this girl, she's a little bit resentful of, not resentful of authority. She's a little bit, does her own thing. She's stubborn, doesn't always listen to her dad. She goes off in the woods, and by the end of the first issue finds the dog. And she's like, what? And when you just read this first issue, you don't really know the significance of it. But as it goes on, this is what sparks her journey. And all you know is that this dog should not live. There's no droids in this world. And this is why I say I think people maybe should read this without reading Descender, because you won't know who that dog is. You won't know, and you'll just be like, why is there a robot? Like, I don't understand. And that's actually a good thing. So, yeah, I just try it. If anything that I said is interesting to you people, absolutely, check it out. I just want to give that book more love, because it's not, it doesn't seem to get the love that it should. Dragon Majesty says Jeff Lemire did the beginning of Terrifics. He did, and I want to read that. And he liked his new Animal Man in New 52. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight, and I am done. So thank you for indulging me.
Thank you for indulging me as well. Let me talk about Ice Cream Man. I snuck a little ha-ha in there, but I think we were having some of those pesky technical issues at the time. But haha it's going to be a 6-issue series, so it's got another 4 issues to go. And we enjoy these Hangout episodes, so I expect that we'll have another one a little bit like this here in the next few months. So when we do, I'll give y'all a little bit more of why I've been enjoying haha. I hope it stays at the same level, but that's one of the other things I like about W. Maxwell Prince, outside of just what I've been enjoying about how he's been writing Ice Cream Man. And I bought another book of his called the Pursuit of Beautiful Things. It's a smaller story, and I started reading that as well. But his consistency is the other thing that just attracts me to his writing. It's I can count on it every time I'm getting ready to read haha or an Ice Cream Man book. I think there's another book that he has that I'm getting ready to purchase, The King of Nowhere, I believe is what it's called. I can just count on it to be quality. It's very much dessert, pun intended. I got to take a time out to shout out Ash real quick. Ash talks about how he's not good at puns. Within like the first 15 minutes of the show, he talked about something not being my cup of tea after me talking about drinking a cup of tea. Ash, my friend, you are punny.
Those were completely not intentional, I assure you. But thank you. So yeah, I wish they were intentional. Then I'd feel better about myself.
Well, hey, I guess if we do more of these Hangout streams, maybe, just maybe, you'll get better and better and better.
Maybe. Anyone in the chat, if you guys, I know it's been a long stream, the technical difficulties, which I again apologize for. It's very frustrating. No one's more frustrated than me, I don't think. I want to have the best presentation for you. I'm going to have to go and probably try to salvage this in the edit. But thank you guys for being here, listening to us. And if after the fact please, even if you didn't make a live stream, if you're watching, you can leave comments in the comment section below. I do read every comment that I get on this channel. And if you have anything for Skip, make sure to forward on to him as well. But we just like talking about comics, and you guys are here. We're not here to just talk at you. We want to interact with you. Dragon Majesty says, more Hangout streams would be cool where you talk about anything. Well, I appreciate that. We definitely should consider having more Hangout streams that aren't just for the indie show. That way we can talk about anything. I do want to make sure that the indie show, I think Skip will probably agree, that we kind of stay on focus a bit. So we're not, people coming here, we're talking about indie comics and we're like talking about WandaVision or something, it's like, I do want to talk about that stuff, but I think for the sake of staying on theme and brand, it's best to do that. But I would definitely, I love doing Hangouts. And if any of you guys think that you could add to the show, if you want to join a conversation with us, shoot us a message on Discord, Twitter. We'd love to expand and do things, have more chit chat, Hangout shows in the future, that sort of thing. Skip, what do you want to say before we tie a bow on this?
There's something rotten inside of all of you. I didn't put it there. There's something sweet inside of all of you too. You're always here giving us nice comments, your time, which is serious because there's not a receipt for that, so you can't return it. There's something rotten inside of you was a reference to an Ice Cream Man issue, so read them all and figure out what Skip is talking about. And let's make Ash better at puns. Can we collectively do that? That's my mission.
Yeah, and if you guys want to throw some puns in the chat, I love puns. I know some people, I was telling Skip, I was like, I don't know why people like make fun of others using puns. I think they're hilarious. And especially the ones when you groan, like you're like, oh, you roll your eyes. Like it's still fun.
That's how you know it's good.
Yeah, it's like dad jokes. I love dad jokes too. Maybe it's because I'm just getting old. I don't know. I think we're going to wrap this up. We had some more books that we're going to talk about, but just the technical difficulties pushed us way beyond time. So, that's good, though. We'll have more content for the next one. I guess I'm going to say thanks for being here. It's my pleasure always. I love hanging out, talking with my boy Skip. He always helps keeping me enthused about comics and about writing and about just many different things. So thank you, Skip. For all that, and I hope to see you guys next time. I'm gonna let Skip say the final words.
Thank you for coming out. God bless you. Good night.